Okay, so we are on Facebook. So for everyone, I just want to say thank you for joining us this morning. We are about to hear from Rebekah Dobbs, Commercial Banking Manager with STCU. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we are live on Facebook. So if you have any issues in Zoom, feel free to watch us on Facebook. We'll be monitoring Q&A as they come in Zoom and Facebook Live, so we'll have time for questions, of course. And then one last reminder, coming up on Friday, we'll have an attorney available and a CPA from Northwest CPA Group talking about tax implications, as well as the expanded PTO and FMLA protections under the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So with that, I just want to say thank you to STCU for partnering with us in this program and transitioning while we offer them virtually now. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Rebekah Dobbs.
Thanks, Logan. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to talk about some financial resources for small businesses. And obviously, we're in some unusual times. So primarily what I'm going to talk about today is the PPP program, because that seems to be top of mind for all of our small business owners. I'd like to start with saying that as a small business owner, the number one thing that you can do right now is communicate with your banker. If you have a banker, reach out to them. If you have questions, concerns, if you don't, reach out to the local branch manager, and just don't forget to communicate. So there's lots of options available for small businesses currently. Banks and credit unions, financial institutions are here to work with all the small businesses. We want to partner to make sure that everyone gets through this okay. So we're offering options in terms of if you have existing loans with, then reach out for options around payment options, potentially deferred payments, skip payments, maybe some interest options on existing notes as well. And then it's also good to remind everyone that we're also business as usual at the banks and credit unions. So if you have current credit needs, certainly reach out to us. And we're still open to look at those as well. If you need lines of credit, or if you're looking to buy a new piece of equipment for some of our essential workers and essential businesses, we have not forgotten about you. We know a lot of focus is on who is currently not able to work, but we are certainly here to service you. We do have for STCU, our lobby at Southridge is still open, and our drive-thru at Queensgate is open as well. So certainly communicate with your current bank and financial institution, because we are all here to help as we move through this. So Logan had asked me, it sounds like there were a lot of questions around the PPP program, which is the Paycheck Protection Program that is going through the SBA. It is certainly the hot topic, and a lot of questions about how does one go about applying for that, who can qualify. There's a lot of conversation around the loan can be forgiven. What does that look like? How does one go about getting a loan forgiven? So I just wanted to walk everyone through the PPP program, and then if people have questions about the program, we can also speak to the EIDL program as well. But PPP is certainly at the top of everyone's mind right now. So I think it's important to first start with just a little bit of history with the PPP. It's been with us for a whopping 2 weeks now. It was signed on March 27th, and it was signed for a total of $349 billion for financial assistance to small businesses. That sounds like a huge number, but the truth is that it will probably go and be used up in its entirety, and there is a chance that there will be some additional funds that will come if that does happen. So they signed it on the 27th of March, and they gave SBA and all of the financial institutions 7 days to figure out how to write the guidelines around the program, and then how to actually facilitate the program. So I know there have been tons of questions about how do I apply, what are the terms, and so on. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so kind of the general parameters around the PPP program is that it is for all small businesses. And a small business is qualified as any business that has fewer than 500 employees. So that covers a very wide range of businesses. And then there's a little caveat for a couple of businesses in hospitality. They can actually go by each individual location if they need to as well. So it's really open to just about everyone. The loan amount can go up to $10 million. And how they calculate the loan amount is they take your monthly payroll and then times it by 2.5. So it essentially covers payroll for 8 weeks. You don't have to put up any collateral for the program. There's no credit check involved. You're not required to guarantee the note. The loan term, it's a 2-year term. The interest on the note is 1%. 6 months of the first payments are deferred on the program as well. Okay, so that is a little overview on the program. Financial institutions were able to start accepting applications on April 3rd, as probably most people know. And it's fair to say that although we were able to start accepting applications on the 3rd, probably about a third of the institutions were actually ready to start processing those requests. Again, there were a lot of unknowns. SBA was still coming out with guidelines on what would be required to submit for the applications. And then there was uncertainty about how once the financial institutions had collected those documentations, they would be transmitted to the SBA for processing and funding. So it's certainly been a work in progress, and all the financial institutions have been working diligently to figure out that program and assist clients in getting these funds secured. So I think anyone that had SBA that were approved as SBA lenders were processing those applications. They were absolutely flooded with requests, and you'll see some people are starting to finally get those funds, those applications funded into the borrowers. Let's see, what else? Okay, so one of the popular questions, or one of the main questions around the actual calculation of doing payroll is what can be included in those numbers. So payroll calculations include salary, wages, commissions, or tips, but they are capped at $100,000 for your employees. So if you have employees that are paid over $100,000, you have to cap those at $100,000. You can also include employee benefits, which would include vacation, family medical, sick leave, so healthcare, and some insurance premiums, and then also payment to retirement funds. So those can be included in the calculation as well. And then for sole proprietors, you can include your wages, commissions, income, and net earnings from self-employment. That also is capped at $100,000. The items that can't be included in the payroll calculation, one, if you are an employer who does hire contract employees, you cannot include the 1099 income into your calculation. Independent contractors need to file on their own. So they would file their own application and submit their 1099 for payroll documentation. And the other important one to recognize is that K-1 distributions are not recognized as payroll as well, so they cannot be included in the calculation. Okay, so you get to the application. What do you need in order to actually apply and submit the application? You will need to supply one of your tax documents. So if you are an employer, that would look like your 940, your annual 940 IRS form, or all 4 quarters of your 941 payroll information. That would be for employers to show your payroll, what you paid to payroll. You'd also want to supply a detailed payroll report so that the financial institution can verify you don't have anyone over the 100,000 mark, or if you do, that additional funds is reduced from the total. For independent contractor, you would just submit your 1099 as documentation. And then for sole props, you would supply the Schedule C of your 1040 for your personal tax return. The other documentations you'll need to supply would be a copy of your driver's license for all owners with more than 20% interest in the company, and your organizational documentation, so we can verify that you are indeed the owner of the organization and are the responsible party. Now here's the big question, and what everybody wants to know is, how do I get it forgiven? Okay, so right now the guidelines are that you need to be able to demonstrate that you used 75% of the loan proceeds to go towards your payroll costs. The additional 25%, or the remaining 25% of the loan proceeds, can then be used to pay rent, utilities, mortgage interest. You will want to be sure to keep detailed records of how you use the funds, so that when you go to apply for forgiveness, you can easily demonstrate how the funds were dispersed and what they went to. That will make the process as easy as possible for you. I know a lot of financial institutions are recommending the idea of actually opening up a separate account just for the loan proceeds, so that all of your documentation is just in that one account, and you can just supply that when you apply for the forgiveness. All of the funds, so you go through the process, you get approved, you have the funds in the account. You now have 8 weeks to use those funds. All the funds must be dispersed within the following 8 weeks. So something to remember. You also need to make sure that you maintain 90% of your staff, your payroll. And then once you've, it gets a little, there's still some more guidelines coming out on the actual process for forgiving, but once you've applied for the forgiveness, then your financial institution has 60 days to approve or deny that request. So that is really the PPP loan program in a nutshell. There is a lot of information out there on the web that will provide greater detail and more information on it. The best place to go, and where I recommend the most accurate information, is obviously at the SBA website, because they will keep you updated with all the latest and greatest information in regard to the PPP. So I certainly encourage people to go there. And they also have a calculator that you can use that will help you calculate your loan amount, and then also help you determine, once you see the loan amount, then how you, depending on how you disperse the funds, how much of the loan amount could be forgiven. So that is the PPP program. Are there any questions so far, Logan?
We haven't had any questions come in, but I was wondering if you had any information. Obviously, we heard from Dan Newhouse on Friday. He estimated about a week left before the pot runs dry. Do you have any news about if there's any talk about more money?
There's lots of talk about more money. So it is interesting, because $349 billion does sound like a huge number. But when you think about the thought that when a small business is considered any business that has 500 or fewer employees, that truly is covering the majority of the businesses in the country. So you have, I mean, an unbelievable amount of applications that are coming in for those funds. And if one loan application can be up to 10 million, those funds actually can go pretty quickly. So that also is causing a bit of the frenzy, if you will. So, you know, we were able to start accepting applications on the 3rd. And I mean, anyone that was accepting applications on the 3rd was just completely inundated with applications. They were seeing, you know, thousands of applications come in. And it takes time to, you know, it takes time to work through an application under the best of circumstances. But then when you're also trying to learn exactly what is required for documentation at the same time, and how to then process them through SBA and get the number back, it takes a while. So people are in a hurry to apply because people are worried the funds will run out. There is lots of conversation that by the end of this week, those funds could be gone, but there is also a lot of conversation that there will be more funds coming due to the demand.
Okay.
Yep.
And then another question is for businesses who are wanting to apply. There was some confusion during our webinar last week about where they can go to apply, what financial institutions are offering the PPP.
Right.
Do you have any clarification? Is any bank offering it, or any credit union? Can they go wherever they're a member at and apply?
Sure, that's an excellent question. So first I would say reach out to your existing bank or credit union, because you will have the greatest chance of being able to submit an application if you are an existing customer or member of one of those institutions. You can go to the SBA website, and it will actually give you a list of all of the institutions that are approved to process SBA loans. But I do know that due to the demand, Logan, a lot of financial institutions are limiting the offering to their existing clients.
Okay.
So certainly start with your existing clients or your existing financial institution. If they are unable to help you, there are some independent SBA financing institutions that will process those applications. It probably is just going to take longer because they're taking the information from all over. If you're already an existing customer, then we have a lot of information, and it's easier for us to go through the due diligence of verifying the information. For an independent, they have to go through and collect some additional documentation to go through their due diligence, but it's certainly an option.
Okay. I have another question that came in. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right. So on Facebook, Vicki is wondering, she's a sole proprietor. Can you apply for a loan to pay for your booth rental?
For your booth rental.
Yes. So her question, I am a sole proprietor. Can you apply for a loan to pay for your booth rental?
So the loan, the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Loan, is specifically based off of payroll. So for a sole proprietor, how you would apply for the loan is you would apply for it if it's just in your name, or if you have it DBA'd or you do have a business set up, you would apply, and then you would supply your Schedule C of the 1040 personal return, and those would be the loan proceeds. So she would need to use 75% of those loan proceeds to pay herself, and then she'd have the 25% remaining to exactly pay her. That would technically, it sounds like, be considered rental expense, and that would be included. But it couldn't solely be used for rental expense. She'd have to use 75% of the funds to pay herself, or if she did have an employee.
Okay. And she did clarify it's for a booth rental at a salon. But
yeah, because that would be considered rent, but she could only use 25% of the proceeds to pay for that rent, to put towards that rent.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
And it looks like we have another question in, just to give everyone a heads up, it looks like you feel free definitely to reach out to senators and representatives to share your personal support for them to continue to consider increasing the amount of dollars dedicated to helping small businesses and others through the CARES Act. I know there's also a huge push for 501c6s to be included, as they were not in the original. But of course, just keep pushing Congress to send out more dollars to stimulate the economy. That came in Zoom. And we had Dan Newhouse last week, so of course, reach out constantly to remind them.
And that's a great reminder without question, because the more they hear, I know that they are actively reaching out to the financial institutions, collecting data. The SBA has yet to actually put out how much of the 349 has been funded at this point. But certainly the sense is that it's getting close, and so they are actively reaching out to find out what the demand is and if there's continued demand. And there certainly is. I mean, we're certainly seeing it.
And then I'll just finish by saying, Because it looks like we don't have any additional questions. So for those of you who didn't catch last week's webinar, it's on our Facebook page. We had the SBA answering many different questions and walking through the process. So it would be a nice complement to what Rebekah has covered today. And as she mentioned earlier, SBA.gov has a great resource available on the landing page. You just click the banner at the very top and it'll take you to all of the COVID-19 resources. And on there, you can actually use the map feature to find a lender. But as Rebekah said, always use the lender you're a member at, because they will probably be able to help you a little bit faster.
There for sure.
And with that, I think we are good. So I just want to say thank you to Rebekah for your time today. I know it's been a crazy time for you in the banking world. And then thank you to STCU for their continued partnership with this program. Before I let you all go, just another reminder, this Friday we'll have Bonnie Sanchi from Northwest CPA Group and Jillian Harlington of Walker High, they're an attorney firm in the Tri-Cities, discussing the tax implications for taking out these loans, as well as covering the FMLA provision and the emergency PTO provision in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. I'm going to get that down by the end of the week, I swear. And with that, I will just say thank you again to Rebekah, and thank you all for attending today.
Thank you.